Welcome to Season 2 of Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to animals and the natural world.
In connecting to our world, we also connect to compassion, understanding, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate from animals and nature, but part of an active ecosystem?
This season, Jen and I will focus on learning about the history of our disconnect to the natural world. What knowledge and connection have we lost and why?
We'll talk with scientists, conservationists, academics, and many others as we look to answer the question, how can we implement change in order to heal our planet?
And we'll explore how we can repair and restore our connection and relationship to our fellow keystone species and ecosystems. Hey everybody, welcome back to Kindred. How are y'all doing? How's it going in your worlds today, this week? Jennifer, how are you? My darling co-host and sister.
I'm good. I'm happy to be looking at buds on a magnolia tree right now. So spring is coming in the Northeast, and that's very exciting.
It is exciting. And it definitely, you and I were away over the weekend. When I got back, it was like, spring is here. It happened within days.
My star magnolia was blooming. The curly willow has all its little leaves on it. Yeah, it's like, wow, in 5 days we got it. It actually happened.
Yep, which is great. I'm happy about that. We were out in the high desert out in western Colorado, which is also in its way gorgeous. I actually am going to start posting on Kindred's Instagram story just, some meditative scenes for a moment for us all to take a pause.
And sounds? Did you get any of the sounds?
Yep, I got some of the sounds. The birds came through in that one.
Sweet.
Yeah, really,
nice.
Really beautiful. So welcome spring. So how about episode 1's conversation with Sean Heinrichs last week?
Pretty fancy.
Or actually, 2 weeks ago.
Last episode, yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
When he tells the story of the mama humpback whale and her baby, did you not feel like you were right there?
I loved that story so much. It was so beautiful. It was so moving. Mm. It really was. And he just was lovely. It was so nice. That whole conversation was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
Smart, impassioned, focused. If you haven't listened, go back and listen to episode 1. You don't want to miss that. It's absolutely golden. So moving towards today's guest, we have an exceptionally unique conversation, I feel like. Today we are talking with Dr. Kate Stafford, who I believe to be the leader in Bowhead Whale song research. Yes, let that sink in. I'll tell you how this all came about in a minute. Just want to start with our highlight today. As we all know, what's going on in Ukraine and the war that's happening there, I just wanted to acknowledge what's going on for a minute. I was thinking about our guest today and where the whales we are covering live, which led me to Alaska and then led me to Russia because it's right there, and then, of course, Ukraine. And then I started thinking about all the people and families who are evacuating and trying desperately to take their elderly and domestic animals with them. And then all the ones that are being left behind. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to acknowledge the epic level of courage it must take to protect yourself and the ones you love in these situations. And the pictures I'm seeing of young and old, carrying kittens and cat carriers and dogs on their shoulders along freezing snowy roads with one carrier bag. And we're sending prayers and understanding and heartbreak to the ones that they couldn't take with them. So lots of love to Ukraine from us. And one highlight I wanted to make in conjunction with what's happening over there is a Instagram account that I've been following for a while called 4 Paws USA, and that's spelled out FOUR, Paws USA. They're an international nonprofit organization, and this one that I follow is based in Boston, but they're all over the world, and they help all kinds of stories, domestic animals, dogs, cats, tigers, bears in captivity. So check out their Instagram account. As far as I can tell, they're a legit, long-standing nonprofit. So I feel like if you were to donate to them, it's a safe, secure, and effective way to support financially. So check them out. And yeah, just Ukraine is in our thoughts.
Indeed.
Also, just wanted to remind you all that we are moving our podcast to every 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for us every other Tuesday. And please head over to Apple Podcasts to follow, rate, and review. It only takes a couple seconds, and it helps others find Kindred. If you want to stay up to date on all things Kindred, follow us on Instagram at The Kindred Pod or on our website, kindredpodcast.co. And if you want to get in touch with us with all your queries and suggestions, write to us at thekindredpod@gmail.com. And now for one of the most delightful and heartening conversations we have had about one of the most astounding animals on the planet, in my opinion. We want to introduce you to Kate Stafford and the Bowhead Whale. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Stafford. Kate is an associate professor in the Marine Mammal Institute at the University of Oregon. She has worked in marine habitats all over the world and is fortunate enough to have seen and recorded these whales in every ocean in which they occur. Stafford's current research focuses on the changing acoustic environment of the Arctic and how changes from declining sea ice to increasing industrial human use may be influencing subarctic and Arctic marine mammals. And today she is chatting with us specifically about her research on bowhead whales and their very unique song. And did I mention that these whales can live up to approximately 200 years? 200 years. Astounding to me. And I will say that I was doing whale research on another topic, and I came across that statistic or that fact, and it just blew me away. I did not know there was a mammal on this planet, or any animal, that could possibly live to 200 years old. So, very grateful to Dr. Stafford for her time. Very inspired by this conversation. So let's head over and learn all about these mysterious singing whales, which they call the songbirds of the ocean. Kate, thank you so much for joining us at Kindred today. If you could just please introduce yourself, tell us what you do and where you're located.
Sure. My name is Dr. Kate Stafford. I am a professor at Oregon State University with the Marine Mammal Institute in Newport, Oregon. And I study the sounds that whales make. I study underwater sound. So technically my title is bioacoustician, which just means the sound of things that are alive.
I stumbled across bowhead whales months ago and was researching something else. And I find bowhead whales astounding, if for no other reason than for the fact that they live for approximately 200 years. And you would think we'd know a lot more about a species that lives this long, but that's why we have you here today. So how did you come to study bowhead whales?
So I actually came to study bowhead whales much in the way I came to my entire career, which is to say, sort of by accident. I started my career studying the sounds of blue whales and fin whales in the Pacific and around the world. And then when I went to do a postdoc after getting my PhD in Seattle, Washington, I had the opportunity to get some recordings of narwhals, which are nothing like a bowhead whale. So in the Arctic, there's only 3 species of whale that are endemic, that live in the Arctic year-round: bowhead whales, narwhals, and belugas. And a colleague of mine works frequently off West Greenland, so I sent her with a recording package to try and get some sounds of narwhals. And I was at home, and one day she called me up on my cell phone from Greenland and said, "What the heck is this?" And she held her phone to the recorder, And what I heard were these whoops and screams and cries of like nothing I had ever heard before. And it was a bowhead whale. It was a bowhead whale singing in April off the west coast of Greenland.
Amazing.
It was pretty remarkable. And that's really what got me interested in, holy cow, what are these whales doing? And like you, up to that point, I hadn't really realized that bowhead whales sang. And they produced these long, elaborate songs similar to humpback whales, but not exactly the same. And out of all the whale species in the ocean, only bowheads and humpback whales sing complex songs that vary both within and between years. And you really couldn't have two whales that are more different than a bowhead and a humpback whale.
Interesting.
So it's really fascinating that these two species should sing these really complex songs.
So I want to back it up just for a second. And because there's a lot of incredible things about bowhead whales, and tell us a little bit about what makes them unique. And then I want to dive deeply into the song.
So I will say that to me, bowhead whales are a whale of superlatives. They're like the best of everything. The only baleen whale that lives in the Arctic, and baleen is this long keratinous plate that hangs from the top row of whales' mouths, whales with baleen, not teeth.
Mm-hmm.
A sperm whale or a killer whale is a toothed whale. A blue whale, a humpback whale, a bowhead whale is a baleen whale. So bowhead whales have the longest baleen of any whale, the thickest blubber, which makes sense because they spend their life in the Arctic. They're able to break through 0.5 meter or 1.5 feet of ice.
Oh.
They can live 2 human lives. They can live 200 years. In addition to all that, they sing, and they sing complex, ever-changing songs. And so to me, they really are a whale of superlatives. And I should say two of the reasons we don't know very much about bowhead whales, I think, is first of all, they are an Arctic whale. So they spend their life in the dark, under the ice, in areas that are incredibly remote to people. And they're very hard to study. But the second reason we know relatively little about them is that even as early as the 1700s, bowhead whales, at least in the Atlantic, were brought to commercial extinction by whalers because they have the thickest blubber, which was used for oil and lubrication and lighting.
Of course.
But also because of their baleen. Baleen is sometimes referred to as whalebone, but it's not bone at all. As I said, it's more like our hair or our fingernails. And you can think of baleen as essentially the plastic of the 17 and 1800s. It was
interesting.
Used for buggy whips. It was used for eyeglass frames. And my favorite, of course, it was used for the stays in ladies' corsets.
Oh, yes, of course.
So baleen was actually an incredibly valuable resource. And because bowhead whales had the longest baleen, they were one of the most sought after whales.
Of course. They had all the things that were lining up perfectly to that, in looking back in history, what humans wanted and needed, quote unquote. And it makes sense that they were hunted almost to extinction. Let's talk about the song of the bowhead whales. What makes their song unique to other whale species?
Basically, the song of bowhead whales is what, if I could spend the rest of my career focusing on just one thing, it would be this. So when we think about song and we think about, say, bird song, and honestly, the science of bird song has really directed how we understand whale song. So if we think about song as a definition, it's a series of repeated signals that might be produced over and over and over again. This is distinct from what we would say is a whale call, where a whale is just making a sound and expecting almost an immediate reaction.
Okay.
And I'm going to take a step back and say that all marine mammals use sound as their primary sense to navigate the world. Okay, because light doesn't go very far underwater. Smell doesn't go very far underwater. So really, sound is what they used to navigate their world. All marine mammals use sound to navigate, potentially to find prey, to keep in contact with each other. to listen to their environment, whether that be waves breaking on the shore or to listen for the sounds of a predator like a killer whale.
Mm-hmm.
Sound is vitally important to all marine mammals. And for animals that live in the Arctic, like the bowhead whale, it's even more important because they live a third of their life under the polar night. So complete darkness. The sun does not rise for 4 months.
Oh my goodness.
And their environment's covered with ice.
Right.
So for them, sound is really important. So bowhead whales make sounds in essentially 2 categories. They make what we call calls, which we think are used to maintain contact during migration, maybe navigate around ice. And those are very simple, fairly low frequency, and I mean low pitch, frequency modulated calls. So things like whoop or ah, that aren't repeated that often.
Interesting.
Song, on the other hand, is produced seasonally from about November to April or May. It's very complex. Bowhead whales, another thing that makes them superlative, is they're actually capable of producing 2 very different sounds at the same time.
Oh, wow.
When they sing. So it's what's called 2-voiced singing.
Yes.
And these songs are broadband, so they range over a broad range of frequencies. They include simple signals. They include really complex multi-harmonic signals. And what's different between bowhead whales and, say, humpback whales is that within a population, bowhead whales will change the song that a population sings daily, weekly, monthly. And in the data I've listened to, I've never heard the same song in 2 different winters.
Oh, wow.
So every year they appear to completely change their song.
Wow.
This differs from humpback whales, who are probably the best known whale singer. All male humpback whales in a population will sing the same song in a winter. And that song might change as the season goes along, but everybody changes to sing the same song. And the following year, they'll sing a slightly different song, but they often use the same themes or phrases that were used before. And humpback whale song tends to be much longer. I've often thought that humpback whale song is more like classical music, where it's patterned and regular.
Right.
To me, bowhead whales seem to innovate, and it's more like jazz to me. And that analogy is really just to get people to immediately understand that it's both music, as it were, but that it's very different.
And the complexity.
Yeah, and the complexity. And bowhead whale songs, individual songs, are relatively short. They might be 45 seconds to a minute and a half, but they'll repeat that same song or a slight variation over many hours. Likewise, a humpback whale song can last for 10 to 30 minutes, and they will also repeat that over many hours.
Fascinating.
Now, Kate, is that, so you said their calls are more for communication and like navigation around ice and such. So are the songs, what is the difference used for the songs? Is it more to attract mates? Or I'm curious, because you said they only sing from November through April or May. What do they do after that? What do they do in the summer?
So that's a great question. And what we think is that the songs are in fact a reproductive display. We assume, although we don't know, that they're produced by males. And the reason we assume that is if you look throughout the animal kingdom, including in the whale world, blue whales, humpback whales, frogs, birds, mice actually sing. It's always the males.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's thought to be potentially a dual display in that, on the one hand, females could be eavesdropping and trying to decide that they want to mate with the male who's got the most complex, interesting song. But it's very highly likely that it's also a inter-male display. So that the males can essentially assess each other and assess their fitness.
Like who's the coolest guy? Yeah.
Exactly. Who's got the best song? And we see that throughout the animal kingdom in terms of if you can assess each other with a vocal display, that can essentially de-escalate things. So you don't escalate to a physical display. And there's a couple of good examples in specifically in the marine mammal world. Elephant seals is one of them. When a big male bull comes out of the water onto a rookery, you'll often hear them make these crazy grunts. And often the grunt of a bigger male is enough to send that other male back into the ocean.
Mm.
But if he doesn't, they'll fight. And it can get really bloody. And one of the males or both males can get pretty severely injured. Right. The same thing can happen with humpback whales. So it's thought that this really is a male-male assessment in addition to the potential for females eavesdropping. But we don't know. Most of what we do know is from humpback whales, which sing in the beautiful, clear, warm waters of Hawaii and Mexico and the South Pacific, where people can watch the whales, they can get in the water, they can see what gender they are and or what sex they are, and make some really good inferences. Bowhead whales are doing this singing behavior in the middle of polar winter under the ice when it's really cold and dark. So
no, thank you. Not going in there. Yeah.
Well, if I could be in a nice warm submarine under the ice in winter with my hydrophone, I'd go.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you collect the data then? How do you record their songs?
So I've got a couple of different ways to record their songs. For overwinter data, I put out hydrophones, which are underwater microphones, and they come in these little packages. And they used to have basically a laptop hard drive in them. But think about it as a recording package that you stick underwater, and it stays there for a year. It's held to the seafloor, a big anchor, which is often an old train wheel.
Aha, clever. That makes sense.
And then it's suspended up in the water column with a float. And when you go back the next summer, you send a signal to the instrument and it all pops up to the surface and you recover it. And so in that way, you get a year's worth of recordings without having to be there. Because you're not there, though, you don't know how many animals are there. Right. You don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You get no visual confirmation.
So you need a little personal submarine, a one-person sub pod. Yeah.
Let's
get on
maybe
that. GoFundMe.
Let's start a GoFundMe for that. Okay.
Exactly.
So right. So you're strictly getting audio.
Yeah.
Yes. But the other way that I get sounds is almost every spring, barring COVID, I go up on the ice with what's called a dipping hydrophone, which is exactly like the microphone that you might put in somebody's face out on the street, except that, of course, you can put it underwater.
Oh.
And I'll stand on the ice edge and watch the bowhead whales go by and record them.
Oh, that must be, that's a beautiful image. That must be amazing.
It's the dream, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
I've said that, and it's absolutely true. There's no place on the planet I'd rather be than on the ice in the Arctic in springtime. It's magic. Everybody should go there or should be able to go there.
Okay. Well, let me know and I'll book the ticket and we'll get a little submarine and we'll go together. Well, okay. Sorry. Continue. That was just a beautiful, magical moment. Visual there.
And so putting hydrophones out like that, where you can actually get a feel for at least a minimum number of animals, is really helpful.
Right.
I have colleagues who've actually put out arrays, so multiple instruments at one time, where you can physically track whales as they move. And in fact, one of the very first studies that integrated visual data with acoustic data was undertaken by the North Slope Borough of the Department of Wildlife Management of the North Slope Borough up in Keogvik, Alaska, working with Chris Clark of Cornell University. And what they were doing is trying to get a count of whales. How many whales are there? And the reason they needed to do this is that in the 70s, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, said to native whalers that they were not going to be allowed to hunt bowhead whales because there weren't enough. Not because native hunters had taken too many, they hadn't. Because Yankee whalers and French whalers in the 1860s had overhunted bowhead whales. And
Yeah.
the people who live in the Arctic said, no, we know there's more bowheads. We know they're capable of migrating in really heavy ice. You need to get the data to show that. And so by both putting out a hydrophone array where you could track animals when the weather was poor, when there was sea ice, animals that were further offshore than you could see, and combining that with people on the ice edge physically counting whales, they found that yes, in fact, there were quite a few more bowhead whales than had been thought from traditional visual methods.
Yeah.
And
Good
so
news.
that was great news. And it was also really an incredibly innovative way to combine both visual and acoustic data to come at an answer.
Yes, very clever. So that makes me want to head in a little bit of a different direction and talk about how, because that's making me think of noise pollution in their environment and how that affects their intercommunication and their connection with each other.
Yeah, so that's actually a really timely question in terms of noise in the environment. I'd say in about the past 10 or 15 years, people have become very aware of the impact of underwater noise on marine mammals. I said earlier, all marine mammals use sound to navigate, communicate, maintain contact.
Yeah.
And when we put noise into the water, primarily from things like commercial shipping, from oil and gas exploration, from sonar, we have the potential to impact how far away animals can hear and be heard. So imagine you're trying to have a conversation underneath a freeway and a bunch of traffic is going overhead. You can't pick out individual trucks or individual cars, but overall the ambient noise, the noise around us, is elevated. So maybe you and I have to talk a little louder or shout, or maybe it's so loud that there's not actually any point to trying to communicate until we go someplace quieter, until the noise calms down.
Right.
You can think about this as the same thing for marine mammals. And in the Arctic, which until relatively recently has been seasonally covered by sea ice, well, actually perennially, so covered by sea ice all year round, and with also seasonal sea ice in some areas, we've largely excluded things like commercial shipping and oil and gas exploration year round. So although the Arctic is a very noisy place from sea ice, from other animals, it hasn't been a very noisy place from humans until relatively recently.
Okay.
So you can think of the species that spend their lives in the Arctic as being potentially naive or inexperienced to human noise. And so with sea ice in the Arctic decreasing in its extent, in its thickness, and the months in which the Arctic is completely sea ice covered, that means that humans are now using the Arctic to migrate or to send plastics and oil and gas and basically ship commercial gear between the Pacific and the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Because it's potentially shorter and less expensive than going through the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal.
Right.
And so where I do a lot of my work is in the Bering Strait, which is this pinch point between the Russian Federation and the United States. And it's the only gateway between the Pacific and the Arctic. And it's only about 80 kilometers wide. And every ship that is going to pass between the Atlantic and the Pacific, whether it goes over the top of Russia or through the Northwest Passage, or even across the proposed transpolar route, which is meant to go right across the pole, has to go through Bering Strait. The other thing that passes through Bering Strait twice a year are tens of thousands of marine mammals migrating from the northern Bering Sea into the high Arctic, where they spend the summer feeding.
Right. And that just makes it feel hectic all of a sudden.
It does. I mean, compared to, say, Long Beach or New York or the other major ports in the world, it's not that hectic, but you're going from 0 to 10 to 20 to 30 ship passages a year.
Right.
So it is a little more hectic.
Yeah.
And the other problem is, of course, we're worried both about underwater noise, but we're also worried about ship strikes.
Yes.
but we're worried about ships running into bowhead whales.
Yeah. Which is a very real worry, because it's like you're saying, it's kind of a bottleneck there. It gets, like you're saying, it's the pinch point. It's very narrow and everyone's trying to get through at the same time. And, who knows what the awareness of the shipping industry is at that time. How do they see them? How do they get out of their way? Do they? And that's hectic for sure.
That's a problem with such narrow passageways and an international border, which goes right down the middle of Bering Strait, is there's not a lot of room to move shipping lanes.
Right.
So maybe one thing we do is we propose ship speed limits. And I wasn't actually super worried about the impact of shipping on something like a bowhead whale, because ships still move north a little bit later. So bowhead whales start migrating north in March, April. By May, most of the population is over in Amundsen Gulf off of Canada.
Okay.
And ships generally in the past came through the strait in what was called the open water season. And that was just the season in which there was enough open water that ships could navigate safely without an icebreaker.
Right.
Now, however, sea ice has become so thin that there's been a recent proposal by the Russian Federation to have shipping year-round. Which means that suddenly the migrations of bowhead whales and beluga whales and ships are going to overlap both in space and in time.
That sounds disastrous to me.
Yeah, me too. So what do we do? Can we slow ships down? Can we limit when ships can pass through? And again, this international border becomes problematic.
Yeah.
And then because the Arctic is so remote, how do you even tell when there's been a problem?
Well, I was wondering, when you were talking about putting the microphones underwater, could you, this might be a really dumb question, but put some kind of motion sensor camera so you could tell what's going on and who's doing
So
what,
you
and
get the visual and the audio.
That's what I was wondering, if that would be a helpful tool or if that's even possible.
Well, I mean, again, a camera is not going to see very far underwater, but what there
When
is
it's pitch black too. Yeah.
is there's something called the automatic identification system, which all large ships, and I forget over the length at which they have to have these, all ships are required to carry AIS, and that sends their location and their speed and their track via satellite that can be accessed. You normally have to pay for access, but in principle, all ships should have their AIS on, and we should be able to track them and understand who's passing through the strait when.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
We can see they're going through in real time, but of course, because we don't get the data back, the acoustic data back, we can't hear them in real time.
Okay.
But not every ship turns on their AIS, and some have, of course, tactical reasons for not doing so.
Right. Yes.
But having access to AIS would at least give people an idea of how fast ships are going, how big they are, what are the potential risks to marine mammals.
Yeah. Just yet another challenge that these animals are facing. Yeah. Switching gears. How do you know, one, how long these animals live? What knowledge about whales and have the native local communities provided you, and how have you pieced this all together?
One of the reasons that people are paying a lot of attention to underwater noise in the Bering Strait region is that bowhead whales are a critical nutritional, traditional, spiritual, and cultural resource for people who live along the coasts of Alaska, Canada, and Russia. So bowhead whales are absolutely critical to food security and survival, and they have been an important subsistence species for millennia for people who live in the Arctic. If you look just along the northwest coast of Alaska, and look at the location of villages, you can see they're all along these little points where bowhead whales pass by in spring or in fall. So because there's a lot of concern about climate change and noise and impact on bowhead whales, people in that region are really worried about sound and how that might impact bowhead whales.
Sure.
So I've been really lucky to be able to go up and listen to the sounds underwater and work with people out on the ice in the hopes of discovering something about bowhead whales, the sounds they make, and how sound impacts them in order to try to help mitigate the impact of sound on underwater animals. What's really fascinating to me is, you mentioned earlier that bowhead whales, as the Inupiaq say, live 2 human lives. So bowhead whales that are swimming out in the ocean now were alive in the 1800s, in the early 1800s.
It's astounding.
It's
astounding.
crazy.
The things that they have experienced in their lifetime.
Right.
Remarkable.
What do they know? And how do they shift to accommodate all the change that's been in that time? That's insane.
It is, because really the change has been relatively quickly, all things considered, in the life
sure. Yes.
world.
Yep.
200-year-old whale.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked how we know this, and I was not involved in this research at all, but I find it really fascinating. There's numerous lines of evidence that tell us that bowhead whales are these incredibly long-lived mammals. Again, as I said, the Inupiaq, which are one of the Alaskan tribes that hunt bowhead whales, the Yupik are the other, they've always said that bowheads live 2 human lives. That's been corroborated by finding old harpoon whaling points in bowhead whales and being able to date them and give us a rough idea of how old the whale that was harvested was.
Mm-hmm.
By finding harpoon points from Yankee whalers that had very specific dates on animals that had been struck back in the 1800s.
Right.
And then recovered over 100 years later. And then also by looking at the chemistry of the eye. And there's something called aspartic acid racemization, where we've got this ratio of a chemical in the eye that changes over time. Humans have it. I think cows have it too. I think many mammals have got this aspartic acid in our eyeball, in our lens, the lens of our eye.
Right.
Changes ratios, much like you think about being able to carbon date something by looking at the ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 18 and tell how old it is.
Right. That's what it makes me think of carbon dating in the eyeball. Right.
Yeah, like carbon dating in the eyeball, but using aspartic acid. And that can tell you roughly how old the whale is. So there's lots of lines of evidence that suggest that bowhead whales do indeed live 200 years.
And you had mentioned in our previous conversation about their earplugs.
Yeah, so large whales, they have ears. We all went from the sea to land, and then whales went back into the ocean.
Right.
But we don't think that they use their external ear. Instead, it fills up with wax, and not unlike a tree will grow a ring every year, whales will lay down a layer of wax in their ear canal every year. And so that makes what's called a waxy earplug. And if you can extract the whole thing from a whale, you can age it as well.
Is it huge?
Oh, it can be many, many, many inches long, many centimeters long.
That's amazing. Sorry, I love this. I love this part.
Well, I mean, think about how big a whale's head is.
Yes, absolutely. Of course.
Yeah.
It's massive. So you're literally able to then bisect it.
Yeah.
And then you can count the waxy rings like a tree.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating.
You know what your mother told you if you eat those apple seeds that a tree would grow in your... No.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather that than an earwax plug. Yeah.
So then what have the native communities offered science? How have they balanced out the knowledge that you know about these whales?
So I've been incredibly privileged to work up on the ice with Inupiaq Eskimos in Utqiagvik, Alaska for way over 15 years now. And, these are people who have lived in the Arctic for millennia. And as I said earlier, have relied on bowhead whales for nutritional, cultural, and spiritual subsistence. So These are people who know and have lived with the bowhead whale intimately their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so from them, we learn that bowhead whales migrate in not cohorts, but different groups. So in the spring, the first whales to migrate are smaller, younger animals. Then we've got the big animals, the big males and females, and finally the mothers and calves. So we learn about the seasonal migration of these animals. We learn about where the animals go and what they do, how long they live. And much of what we know now about the physiology of bowhead whales, about this earplug, about the eye lens, is from a collaboration between hunters and scientists, where the hunters will allow scientists to sample the animals that they're going to use to feed their communities. And from that, we've learned a tremendous amount about bowhead whales that we never would have learned otherwise.
Yeah.
We know that bowhead whales can smell, not as well as a dog, about as well as maybe humans.
Wow.
I know. So they can smell. We sort of wonder, do they do it to smell prey? What are they doing? We know, of course, that they're incredibly sensitive to sound. You know, one of the first things you learn when you go out on the ice is to not stomp around, to be quiet. If you're on a snow machine, you don't park too close to the edge, or if you're on thin ice, you don't snow machine over it because it acts like a drum head and puts sound into the water. So we know that bowhead whales are incredibly sensitive to sound. We know they live 2 human lives. I am constantly learning every time I have the privilege to go up and work on the ice.
Absolutely. And they're so deeply integrated into the ecosystem, into the migration patterns, into the whole experience of these amazing animals. And they're there all the time, generation after generation. And like you're saying, the intimate connection they have is something that you would never be able to get, because for all the reasons, and the willingness to share this information is so critical to your research.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly valuable. And I would say that, for every scientific discovery that any Western scientist makes about bowhead whales, it pales in comparison to the knowledge that is held traditionally and culturally by the Inupiaq and the Yupik. So I'll be up there on the ice, and there's just this amazing sense of community where the hunters are providing food for their community. Everybody goes out. Everybody celebrates the whale. And I have to say that as somebody who comes from the lower 48, I just feel like we miss that sense of this cultural touchstone. There may be many communities that have it, but I kind of feel that we're missing out by not having that incredible center to our communities elsewhere. But that's my perspective from an outsider, right? As I said to you in our earlier discussion, I cannot speak for the Inupiat. I am a white woman who lives in the lower 48. I am just incredibly grateful that I get to see even a glimpse into the world of the bowhead through being allowed out on the ice.
Well, that's just really beautifully said. And we're gonna end with that feeling and that thought. And we are equally as grateful to you for sharing your knowledge and your experience. And I have to say, every time you used the term singing or song, you smiled, and my sister and I were smiling. And there's something really beautiful about these sentient being animals, and just really lovely to chat with you about it and to hear your experiences, something that we really probably won't be able to get that little tiny submarine and come to the Arctic ice with you, but I would really love to. And the fact that you get to experience that is such a joy for us. It makes us smile through your experience. And just thank you so much for sharing what you know. And I was saying to Kat, our producer, that you really are one of the only people who are studying these animals. And so thank you. And is there a way to support you in your research? I mean, is there somewhere to find you? How can we support you?
I guess I would say the best way that people can support me in my research is to every day think about the natural world, whether it's looking at ants on the sidewalk or bees in your neighborhood, and understand that while I'm incredibly lucky to get to go to the Arctic, which is an amazingly special place, like our whole planet is a special place. There is so much nature that is worth preserving, from the whales to the insects. And I think that if everybody remembered that and valued that, we would be in a much better place. The Earth is worth protecting. I don't want to go to Mars. We've got the best planet in the solar system.
Same.
It provides everything for us. And so if people just thought about that in their day-to-day lives, even for a few minutes, and just sat with nature, and I know people are busy and stressed and have to make a living and feed their kids, but just to think about the earth that sustains us, and here I'm getting a little woo-woo, that's a way to support my research and support what I do, because what I really care about is the planet, and trying to talk to people about these incredibly special animals that they may not have known existed, but they're just one species amidst millions that all do something really different and really interesting, and we're never going to run out of really cool mysteries on our planet.
Well, that is beautifully said. And it definitely hits straight to our heart. And it's so much of why we do the podcast, and it's why we call it Kindred, because these are kindred to us. They are our family. And thank you so much. Again, we're going to end on that other beautiful note. What an absolute joy to speak with you. And thank you for your time. Good luck on the ice. I will think of you many, many times quietly on the ice, dipping your microphone in and just seeing these lovely, beautiful beings just slide past you, and that moment that you must share with them. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome back to The Takeaway. What a lovely, inspiring, as usual, very fascinating conversation with Dr. Kate Stafford. There's so many just points of interest.
So many.
That I have to go over. I know we all just listened to it, but astounding to me. Just first of all, how she would talk about the superlative nature of the bowhead whales. Yeah. And I just love that. Yeah. It's so true. I mean, approximately 200 years lifespan. I mean, it's incredible to me. And their beautiful song and how it's compared to songbirds. They just amazing. And how the only documented animal that has that much voice control, I think that's incredible. Yeah. And then how she just mentioned how they have this two-tonal, or otherwise known as overtone singing ability, which is super rare. Humans can do it, and our editor, Dan Cooper, who's also a voice teacher and runs choruses and has a whole business, knows all about music and singing. He was the one who told me it's called overtone singing, and that there's this woman called Layla Hathaway that can also do it, and we will put a link to YouTube that you can hear her sing this way in our show notes. But just the fact that these animals can do that is just incredible. What control they have of their vocal cords.
Yeah, and how it was so interesting because I didn't even know what bowhead whales were before you found Dr. Stafford. And so just learning all this stuff about them and how, because they live in the Arctic ocean, they are in the dark all the time. And how I thought was fascinating, how she talked about all marine mammals use sound and how vital sound is to their communication, but the bowhead especially, because there's only even 4 months in the year, I think she said, that aren't complete darkness. But when she was talking about their songs, she was saying that they're much shorter than a humpback song. Humpback songs can go on for many, many minutes, and these are more like, I think she said 45 seconds to a minute and a half, but they have a lot more variety than the humpback too, which is like probably because that's all they rely on. This is the one way they communicate everything. They can't really go past each other and give a glance because they can't see each other.
Right.
They are in pitch black. So,
Yep.
And how she was saying they were more like improvisational, and like every song is different.
Yeah.
Like a jazz musician,
Yes.
they were relating it to, as opposed to the humpback that every male sings the same song for the whole year. They sing that same song, and these guys change it up. So they're just, they seem like they're really smart, is what I'm thinking too. Like they're just
Yeah.
a different level of intelligence. Maybe because they live so long, they're just smart as anything.
Yeah, I know, it's incredible. And yeah, the fact that I love that she stayed like the jazz players of the orchestral singing world in the ocean.
It's
Just
so cool.
amazing. Yeah, very, very cool. And just that they're the largest of all the whales. They have the largest baleen, which is the filter feeding system inside their mouth.
Yeah.
And they get their name bowhead from this bow dome that they have. It's so ultra thick that they can break through almost 2 feet of ice. And they know that because from reports from Native Alaskan communities who have seen this, which is astounding.
Yeah.
They're just incredible. Also, how I loved how Kate talked about how they know how old they are, approximately. So just again, to go through this list, because I just find this fascinating. She talked about dating age through eyeballs via what she called aspartic acid technique, which I kept calling, it's like carbon dating. She's like, yeah, no, but yes, that's sort of the same idea. I mean, you're not testing it on live animals, obviously, but I'll put in a link to an article describing the aspartic acid technique. It's really, if you want to totally nerd out, it's actually really interesting. And then the earplugs, these massive earplugs that every year, I guess they added. You should see my sister's face right now. She's just shaking her head.
I'm just picturing it like amber. You know what amber looks like? If I picture it like looking like amber instead of earwax, I get way less grossed out.
Let's talk about amber earplugs then. Yeah. We will make that we'll tell Dr. Stafford to make that legit. Let's make that scientific.
Palatable.
Yes. Yeah. But that you can date these massive, beautiful, glowing marine, what are you calling it? Amber earplugs. They don't look anything like amber. P.S.
I'm just making that up to make me.
But
feel
you
better.
can date them like tree rings,
right? So
because they add a new layer of wax every, I guess, yearish or something like that.
That's what she was saying.
Which
and
is
because
very
their
cool.
heads are so massive, like you were saying, they're just. I got it.
So
I'm going to Google that. I haven't done it yet, but.
Maybe we'll Google it and put a link to the picture on our show notes.
It's a
Absolutely.
good idea. We should.
So just amazing. And then, of course, like she was talking about harpoon and spear tips taking from industrial whaling from, the 17, 18, I mean, forever back.
Yeah.
So that's actual, like, metal dating. And then local and native communities just giving their stories, and their long-standing information about age, and so really interesting. And then I think that leads me to how Kate really emphasized the critical knowledge that she has learned about the whales from the native communities in Alaska. She made a point of how she wouldn't know what she knows without them, and lays out how much science can learn and should learn from the expansive and detailed information from those who have lived with these animals in ecosystems and in them, and the critical knowledge that's been handed down for centuries. I just loved her point of that, and her just saying, I wouldn't know so much of what I know without those communities. And I think, again, like you and I have talked many times, this goes for a lot of types of knowledge in the science community.
For sure. And just the fact that as a scientist, though, she gives deep gratitude and respect to them for sharing that with her. And she knows how fortunate she is to be welcomed by them was so nice, too. Like, she's not like, oh, I'm the scientist, I'm going to come in and tell you all how it is. Her humility and coming to them was very palpable. Yeah, you know?
Absolutely. And really important.
It's the only way it can really work. Yeah.
It's how it should work.
Yeah.
And I just think another point, I think bowhead whales are also a really good example of marine life and sound pollution. I think we don't understand the impact that sound pollution is making for marine life and migration. Kate talked about the Bering Strait and the potential challenges and dangers they face there, and that is their migration route. They go up and down that. So I just think that's something to really take pause and think about the different types of noise pollution that are happening, and not just in the ocean, but out in our backyards, in our street. I was trying to take a little video the other day, and cars kept coming by, and I couldn't get the songbirds. It's hard to get to very quiet spaces anymore. So yeah, just so much critical information, and a really fun conversation that we had with Kate. And I'm going to take you guys out with actual audio of Kate's recordings of the bowhead whales, and you're going to really get a sense of what we've been talking about. I would also Google humpback whale song just to hear the difference about what you were talking about earlier, Jen. Like they're the long songs, and these guys just whoop it up, and it is so cute, and it's really, really sweet. So check that out and enjoy these clips thanks to Dr. Kate Stafford and the sweet songbirds of the ocean. See you in 2 weeks, guys.
Bye.
Lots of love. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes.